This is what science fiction is all about. You take a what if, and that what if can be impossible, but you just like, you kind of wink to the end and just go with it. Just allow this one impossibility. And let's see what happens logically if we just spin out the possibilities. Just turn the handle, then what would happen? The algorithm wants people to engage more, and it discovers it doesn't even know what like rage bait is. It doesn't know what lying is. It just knows that this post gets more engagement than that one. This is one of the things that I find in science fiction. It's a lot easier to write dystopian science fiction than it is to write a solution to a dystopian science fiction. It's very easy to create problems. Solving them is actually a lot harder. I have some opinions about AI. Because it's such a wide-ranging tool, like the modern form of AI at least, it can impact a lot of different things simultaneously, and gathering together all of those impacts simultaneously into one and figuring out how the world at large will change is quite difficult.
Thank you, sir. I'm very grateful you made it today. I'm overwhelmingly excited to speak to you today. How are you, Sam? You good?
I'm very well, and all the better for being on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'm trying to rack my brain because as I'm getting ready for this conversation, and I won't lie, I should have slept a lot more last night if I weren't trying to beat your record of 5 lines on Hatetris, which is a game that you created where basically the worst possible block is served to you next in the regular Tetris game.
Yep.
I was up way too late. And I thought, did I read this on a beta newsletter a long time ago?
Probably. So yeah, like for context, like I made that like in 2010. Like that's old. That's been around for a long time. So yeah, very possibly. But yeah, it's more of a prank than a game, I think.
Yeah.
And I just love the people's reactions when they play. I'm like, oh, this is never gonna give me a long thin piece, ever, 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 and it's brilliant. So
just for context, I actually knew Rob. I met Rob years ago, who writes beta. I met him like over 25 years ago, and so I've been a follower of that newsletter. It's a British kind of meme newsletter that's been running since 2000 or 99 or something like that. Him and Camilla from Pop Bitch are mates, and I knew Camilla first, and so I remember that being along the lines. But also for context, I am someone who clocked Tetris on Game Boy once. Like I got all the way to launching the space shuttle and got to the end, and like, nice. Well, what happens now? It's like when you dig too deep in Minecraft. Like, what happens now? Like,
yeah, your life is without purpose. Like, you need to move on. And
so I approached your game going, this is fine. I am the master.
I'm shaking my head. No, it's great. The thing is, a lot of people have played Tetris. Tetris is an incredibly popular game, and a lot of people have analyzed Tetris. Like, mathematically, it's actually a really interesting puzzle, a really interesting problem. And in particular, some people have attacked, because it becomes kind of a two-player game, an adversarial, asymmetric two-player game, where player 1 is trying to play Tetris normally, and player 2 is trying to kill player 1. And so, which I think is kind of interesting. And people have written like really complicated pieces of software to analyze and attack Hatetris and try to get the maximum possible number of lines. The record was about 31 lines for like 11 years straight. And then people started applying like proper neural networks and say like, we can beat this. And the record has risen and risen, and it went into 3 figures, and then it's gone into 4 figures. And Hatetris is, from my perspective, completely broken. We are ready for a new harder version of Tetris at this point.
But you're telling me that these scores are being set by not human people?
No, these are being set by machines, by human beings who have written incredibly specifically, carefully programmed machines to play the game and analyze the game and discover the best possible techniques.
Yeah, but if I told you I've gone into the city of Sydney in 21 minutes, which is, a good hour and a half away, you'd be like, what? It's like, I rode my bicycle. It's like, yeah, it's not quite the same, is it? Yeah, I got there, but I used a machine to get me there.
Well, no, I consider them 2 different approaches. Like, right. In the same way, we have sprinting records, right? We have the Olympics, we have the Winter Olympics, but you have the Summer Olympics where you have sprinting records. But also we have like the land speed record.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, how well can you do unassisted? How well can you do with the assistance of a machine? These are 2 different disciplines, and I like to have them both. I like to explore both of those possibilities because like they test our limitations in different ways. On the machine side, it's about invention and
Yeah.
creativity rather than fitness.
It's like a new Turing test for a machine. It's like, can you beat Hatetris? Can you?
Absolutely.
Because it is deliberately a very nasty puzzle for a human to play. It's clear if you read your work, if you read the science fiction work you've written, or you have any kind of concept of how difficult it is to hard code, computer programs, it's pretty clear that you, Sam, have a big brain. When in your life did you kind of realize, oh, not all kids think like me?
Oh, wow. I don't know. This is something so I have in particular, I've got a kind of a mathematical sort of brain. And mathematics is something that I think you figure out pretty early on that you're better at maths than most kids in school. Because the thing about maths is the ceiling of how good you can be at maths is actually inconceivably high. And I used to think I was pretty good at maths. And a lot of stuff that you would do in primary school and even in secondary school, I could do pretty easily. For example, like there are exams, and they say, yeah, you can bring a calculator into the exam because most of it's algebra. Like a calculator is not going to be very helpful here. And they would say, oh yeah, you can bring a graphing calculator in as long as you reset it. You don't bring any notes on the calculator itself. And I was like, I don't need the calculator. It's all right. I'll just derive the results I need. It's all right. That's not a tremendous flex if you know the kind of exams we're talking about. But I got to the end of school thinking I was pretty good at maths. And then I went to university and I studied mathematics. And there I was among people who had come up in the same sort of way and had also gone through school thinking they were pretty good at maths. I was like, oh no, we're on a level footing now. You're going to see some challenge. You're actually going to, you've hit traction. You're going to have to work for your academic results now for the first time ever. In all other subjects, I was challenged in the normal way, like French and history, I had to work just like anybody. But I studied maths, and suddenly, you realize just how hard it can get. But on the other side, I would say that there are many, many different things that you can be smart at and get good at. And there are many, many things that I am not smart at and not very good at. And I always have that appreciation for other people who are better at that kind of thing than me. So, for example, things like acting, that kind of thing. I can't act. I'm horrible at that kind of thing. And I have tremendous respect for people who do, because they can do something that I can't to a very high level of ability. It's good to have people who are specialists in different sorts of things kicking around.
I was terrible at mathematics, and my ego really got in the way of me doing probably the mathematics course I should have done in high school, which was what we call maths for footballers in my school, or maths for rowers. But instead I chose the hard one and just was humiliated every day. I found it very, very, very difficult. So I can't quite understand what it is to have that ability to just walk into a high school maths exam without a calculator, an exam designed for kids like me who need a calculator. But what I can say is there was a point in my life when I was playing 4 to 5 games of Scrabble a day against one of my housemates he's a stand-up comedian. He's a brilliant dude. And when you start playing that amount of Scrabble, when you start to know every single 2 and 3 letter word by heart, and there's 900 3-letter words, you start seeing street signs, and instantly your brain goes, I can put 4 3-letter words under that I could hook downwards. You start seeing the world differently.
Yeah.
Did you ever get the point with your mathematical brain where you started walking around and seeing, all right, I can see the exact golden mean over there, and I can see the equation in that doorway?
Not exactly, but you do start to see things in terms of engineering. So a good example would be any bridge that has an arch underneath it. You look at that and you go, that's probably an inverted catenary arch, because that's the structure. That's the best way to build a brick bridge. It has been for hundreds of years. That's probably the shape it's going to be. These days, it's possibly not, because engineering has advanced quite a long way since that sort of era. But the other thing is, because I work these days, I study mathematics, but I work in software. I work in software development. And so you understand, once you work in software, that literally everything in the universe is a computer. Not literally, of course, but all the systems that you and I are interacting on the podcast with, the machine in front of me, the system that runs the display on a bus, the bank card, the way all of that works, it's all computer systems. And once you understand that kind of thing, you see people have glitches, right? They say, oh, this machine malfunctioned, and it said that the date on my concert ticket was 31st of December 1969. They're like, why 1969? It's like, I know why it's 1969. That's because like that's when computing time starts. Like by default and by convention, like computing time starts on 31st December 1969. There's a reason for that. I'm not going to go into it, but there's a difference between people who will see that bug and go, oh, it's a funny computer glitch. And I have a pretty good idea of why that computer glitch is happening, which is just kind of interesting. You see things at a slightly different level.
You mentioned before that once you start to understand mathematics, that how large it can get.
Yeah.
Once, I guess it's like most things, like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Once you start seeing the upper echelons of like, oh boy, you start to stretch the bits of your brain that can conceive really, really big numbers. For most people, like me, for example, it's as if like a number bigger than to be honest, a number bigger than 300 may as well be a jillion, because I can't really think of it. You know, I'm pretty good with crowds. I spend a lot of time in front of crowds. I can probably guess how big a crowd is up to about 50,000, but let's be honest. But beyond that, it's all guesswork. And I wonder if that informs the way you write, because if there's one thing that I truly love about your writing, it's the way that you can, in such a condensed space of prose, write about gargantuan stretches of time and space in a way that I can understand it. And I remember lying in bed at my son's age, understanding that the universe didn't end, and then my brain just going boop, and just spinny beach ball, right?
Yep.
Stopped.
Yep.
When did you start to think about time and space and in the way that you are able to write it down?
A lot of this starts with just reading other science fiction. Like you go up in school, like we had a school library. I would just go in there and take down like Arthur C. Clarke books or Douglas Adams books and read about that kind of thing. Really good hard science fiction, like speculative fiction, will be going into those fields of real science. Like, I'm going to recommend a really good Wikipedia page to you. It's called Timeline of the Far Future. And it says like, well, here's what's likely to happen 1,000 years from now, and 10,000, and a billion years, and a billion years, and a billion years. And different things are happening at all of those timelines. And it's just like, it's dizzying and fascinating and really, really cool. And it's one of these things where you just got to go deep into some kind of subject and find cool things and then build a story about those things, a narrative that exposes those things and shares them and like uses those things to drive the narrative. Because if you go deep into anything, it doesn't have to be like huge numbers or astronomy or mathematics. It can be anything. It can be 5th century Chinese history or lace working or anything like that. If you go deep into that subject, you're going to find stuff which is relatively normal for people who are familiar with that subject, but might be really interesting and surprising for people who aren't. And if you're able to go deep into a subject and then come back out and tell a cool story, then you might have a story which has like that interesting exotic sort of flavor to it, where it is a story which you can get to grips with, but there's stuff going on in that story which is like head-turning and weird and satisfying, because it makes a kind of sense. And that, I think, is one of the main things about science fiction, is that it's taking interesting pieces of science that perhaps most people are not aware of, and then putting them right in the middle and driving the story with those pieces of science and making it important. I think that can be really interesting. It's not the only way to tell a story, of course, but I think...
No, not at all. But
works.
I think you've touched on something that is what I really connect with about your work. One of your novels, Ed, which is, and you mentioned Douglas Adams before, because I've just been at night when I'm putting my son to bed, we listen to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio plays, and I forget like how fucking funny they are, but also how he gets around problems with like, this is of course impossible. But you know, a lot of it's kind of quite hard-coded, you know, science. And you go, well, yes, that I understand why they would have fallen through a hole in space like this. But with something like with Ed, where it's like, it's a story about a kid and his best mate's just this, you know, Rick and Morty kind of level mad scientist in his basement just creating stuff.
Yep.
And it's always based on a thing where you go, oh yeah, that works. Oh, I can see how that works, and that works. Oh, now you're just this giant mecha thing in space fighting monsters. I can see how very quickly we get from here to there. And that's the believability of it, I think, that I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It must be quite fun to come up with that stuff.
Oh, it's great fun. So what I like to do, I think I did that a lot in Ed. I've done it to a greater or lesser extent in everything that I've written. It's about taking a what if. Again, like this is what science fiction is all about. You take a what if. And that what if can be impossible, but you just you kind of wink to the end and just go with it. Just allow this one impossibility. And let's see what happens logically if we just spin out the possibilities. Just turn the handle, then what would happen? Then what would happen? Then what would happen? Well, if you turn the handle often enough, eventually you get to a point where someone's destroyed the universe. I was like, that's cool. You got a story there. Keep going. What happens after the universe is destroyed? Like, there's no reason to stop. I can keep going. Obviously, it doesn't work with everything. If you come up with a what if and you turn the handle a bunch of times and you discover that nothing interesting happens, that's great. Just shove that one aside, try something else. But certainly that's what's happening in Ed and all my other books is I'm starting from something interesting that, if taken to its logical extremes and beyond, just breaks the universe and insane things start happening, which are interesting to watch, in my opinion. And then hopefully it comes back around to a compelling, complete narrative.
Not only do you write about time in a great way, you write about scale in a way that is just, I don't want to spoil the ending, but there's, in the book Ra, you talk about the scale of the structure that people have created to provide energy. Yeah. And the way that you describe it, you just kind of well, I guess if you had an infinite amount of energy and therefore mining and a foundry and transport of this stuff into space, yep, that could work.
Yeah. Would you say that could work? I know exactly what you're talking about. In reality, I don't think it actually would work. But the point is that there's 2 points there. So one of them is in universe, the people who built that are flexing. They have limitless power and they just want to show it off. They want to bend the universe to their will in a way which is yeah, we were here. It's kind of leaving a mark that's visible from other star systems. That's cool. But also out of universe, me personally, there's a rich history in science fiction of creating gigantic stellar structures just for the purposes of fiction. So things like a Dyson sphere is fictional. There's no such thing as a Dyson sphere. It's impossible to build. It's ridiculous, but it's a really cool concept. Things like the Ring World from Larry Niven's Ring World is again utterly impossible, but it's cool. And he built a really incredible story around that, and a bunch of sequels as well. And similar structures have come up. Any Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. This huge cylindrical structure just arrives in the solar system and parks. And it was what is this thing? And they explore it, its possibilities. So there's this huge history in science fiction of building cool things just because they're for the sake of cool. Just because of the reaction that you just showed us, where you're kind of head-to-head exploding and you're dizzy. And I was I love that reaction. I like to cultivate that reaction. I do that intentionally. So thank you very much for responding positively.
Sam, cool. It's look, I've been through some wild shit in my life. I went through some really terrifying moments of existential anxiety about climate, and I ended up episodes of psychosis. It was terrible, terrible, terrible stuff. And part of me getting better was through exposure therapy. And part of that exposure therapy was starting to read dystopian science fiction, starting to read what if everything does fall off the edge? What happens to humans? What happens to our story? And, sometimes I'd read a sentence a day, but I got it up to a paragraph and I got it up to, a page. And now this is how I go to sleep at night. It's my exposure therapy is to keep that muscle flexed, is to just go, oh yeah, okay. Well, in all the stories, humans still exist. And there is culture.
Indeed.
And people still fall in love and have babies and eat food and watch films and make dumb jokes and fart.
That will always be the case. 10,000 years from now, I think we're probably still going to be eating food and hanging out with our kids,
Yeah, exactly. But you mentioned the timeline of the far future. And we are you and I are now living in a time when some of the very first science fiction is our reality. And I think of two particular ones, and they're both dystopian. E.M. Foster's The Machine Stops, where the lead character is in a room by herself and she's staring at a screen, And her son calls her up and says, "What are you doing?" She says, "Oh, I'm watching this fantastic lecture, and then later on, I'm going to see the Melbourne Philharmonic Orchestra play a concert, and after that, I'm involved in a community group, which is da 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 da. Will you come see me?" "Well, I can't possibly do that. I'm busy." And she's in a space that's maybe 3 by 3 meters, and a machine opens a door and puts food on a plate and retracts every 3 hours, and that's her life. And we think about now, what do we do? It's like, oh, I'm not going to go outside. I've got everything I want in the palm of my hand.
When is that story from?
I want to say 1905, 1910.
Right. I haven't read it, but I was like, hang on a minute. We're here 120 years later.
I can't believe I'm telling you about a book you haven't read before.
I'm going to. Like, you're the second person who's mentioned it to me in like 1 week. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a short story. It's probably about 10,000 words. You'll whack through it.
But the point you're making is like, that story is from 1905, and here we are 120 years later, basically.
1909, sorry? 1909.
1909. Like,
yeah.
Like, well played, E.M. Forster. Like,
yes.
Nicely done.
Saw it all. Saw the absolute convenience of a mechanized, like we no longer have to farm. We no longer have to, there's a machine for everything. Why would I ever leave the house or connect with my kids? Why would I go anywhere? And the twist is in the title, because the machine stops. And that's the third act, and I'll let you discover it. It's unbelievable. It's just so staggeringly vast in its scope, and he was a very clever dude. The other one would be Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which we are kind of nudging up against. All right, but we're definitely in the here. Have something that distracts you from all the bad stuff. Just keep looking at it. Keep enjoying it.
I think it's the things that give us pleasure that enslave us, or something approximately along those lines. I have read A Brave New World. It was a long time ago, though. But yeah, well, it's interesting because it depends on your perspective. That can be dystopian science fiction, but from the perspective of the people inside that science fiction, it's utopian science fiction, which in a way is the worst part. Really interesting story.
The way that science fiction authors are able to, is what I like. My wife's into fantasy, right? So there's dragons, and like I used to play Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid, but when it comes to storytelling, if you need to invent a spell to get you out of a plot hole, I am disappointed. If you are using something that exists in my reality, like yourself, like just give me some basis to hold on to, and then a bit of like, we'll fill this part in later, and now Dyson Sphere, like, cool, I'm there, I'm with you. That's enough for me. But it allows, both those things allow us to examine what humans would do under an imaginary set of circumstances and explore human nature in those scenarios. And I think that for me is the wonderful thing about science fiction, and to be recognizably in a space that has been described in books as recently as 100 years ago, like books that had no idea that solar power would exist, no idea that television would exist. No, radio was it. And so accurately describing it is both impressive and terrifying.
It's pretty good. Well, I've been enjoying, I found, so you mentioned Douglas Adams, we've mentioned it a couple of times. Certainly in Hitchhikers, there's stuff in Hitchhikers which was clearly, he's talking about like genuine people personalities. So there's this spaceship, all the doors on the spaceship have their own personality. Like, it is their pleasure to open for you and their satisfaction to close again with the knowledge of the job well done. And when you walk up to one and goes, "I'd be pleased to open for you, sir," and it opens up, and then it goes, "Have a good day," and you're like, how did, like, that reminds me very much of like modern obsequious chat LLMs, right? That's very chat GPT, is just like smartly and like helping you do something which like, I didn't need this is a tool. This is an object. It didn't need to have a personality inside of it. I was like, how did Douglas Adams call that? Like, good job.
The sycophantic way. That's a really good idea, Sam. Would you like me to percolate? Like, don't do that. Just give it to me straight. It's, I find it very, I've had to tell the ones that I use, like, don't do that anymore, because it distracts from what's going on. When you are exploring, when you are setting out this, the new rules of the game, which is what science fiction authors do. They go, here's the rules of the game, here's the game board. Now let's put people in it and explore what happens. Which are the bits that you tend to enjoy exploring most, the interactions between humans? Is it intimacy? Is it friendship? Is it crowds?
So usually, I actually prefer. I like the ideas themselves. I know. So generally, I'm motivated to put characters in there who are like actively involved in exploring and pushing forward these ideas. And so in my book Rod, there's magic. So it's like the present day, except magic exists as well. It's another field of engineering. It's like chemical engineering and nuclear engineering, magical engineering. It's just another thing you can study in university. But there's a lot of questions like, wait, where is magic from? What's going on? Like, how did it get here? Why did we only discover it in like 1972? Where was it before then? And so quite a few of the characters in that story are deliberately positioned to be investigating that question, because that's what I wanted to do. Is like I wanted the characters to unpick the background and figure out what's really going on, because that's where the real meat, in my opinion, is. Like that revelation, that discovery, and then learning what you can actually do with magic, which is not obvious at all, but far more powerful. So I'm placing my characters in such a position where they can grab, where they're motivated to grab onto that. And so what I sometimes find is that my characters are researchers or students or scientists, people who are interested in that kind of thing, and their relatives, their hangers-on, their partners, people who have to deal with the fallout of someone being completely obsessed with this kind of thing. I think that's a good interaction, because you need someone who is grounded, and so you need someone who is thoroughly invested in the science and the tech and the what if, and you need someone else who is trying to keep them on the ground and to stop them from running away and destroying the universe by accident. I like human interactions a great deal, but they're things that I kind of thread into the story as a mechanism to explore the idea.
To get onto the book, there is no Antimemetics division, and there's 2 versions of it now. I've read the first version twice, and I read the next version just the other. I finished it off again the other week. I love it so much because it plays into the idea that every single person in let's just say a domestic relationship or an intimate relationship is understood, in that we might have experienced the same thing, but we remember it differently. And kind of playing with that idea. And it's terrifying.
There is a great deal of that in the story. Yeah, there's a lot of subjectivity. Something that I've been finding is like, if you're in a relationship, is like you may remember something that the partner doesn't, and vice versa, and that can be a slightly alarming prospect sometimes. That can work against you sometimes.
That is more my experience, to be honest.
It can be a source of conflict.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it's turned up like it's not really a domestic sort of problem in the story. It's not it's a sci-fi thing. It's turned up to 10,000 times worse.
You've dialed that what if engine in, you've cranked that handle and gone like, it's almost the Mandela effect. Like, what if we could deploy the Mandela effect on a national level? What if we could push a button and drop a bomb?
Yep.
That would make everyone remember something differently.
Or everyone forget that something happened.
Exactly.
And you're like, no, that bombing never occurred. Those people never died. There's nothing, that's always been wreckage. Like, you're like, no, hold on. Like, my husband was in there. So yes, just being able to rewrite history or the perceived state of the world in such a way to your advantage. It's a very powerful tool if you can have it.
I thoroughly enjoyed the exploration into the kind of secret divisions that secret divisions don't even know about. Did you spend any time researching and when kind of walking around kind of black sites, or do you have mates who work in the space? Because it's all very detailed.
I have no mates who work in the space, but the thing is, a lot of what the real CIA, and in the UK we have the UK equivalent to the NSA is GCHQ. Some of what these organizations do is reasonably well known, or at least it's common knowledge. Whether it's accurate, that common knowledge, I don't know, because I don't actually work there. But there are some safe assumptions that you can make about how these organizations need to operate and how compartmentalization of information has to work internally. You can make some guesses, and if those guesses are inaccurate, well, what are they going to do? Go, no, the actual CIA works like this and this and this. Obviously, they're not. That doesn't really matter if you get it wrong. But also for the purposes of fiction, like this is a fictional organization that I've invented, so it can work internally however I think it should work. So again, I'm sitting there going, okay, logically speaking, this organization cannot exist because the fiction, the monsters that they're dealing with are impossible. But if they did exist, how would they have to work? What rules would they have to follow? What structures? What protocols? How does one survive in an organization like this? What kind of personality do you need to have? Like, what's your day-to-day life like? And you discover that if, like, this is the premise of the book, there are things that you can't remember. There are things that just walk around, and you should be able to remember them, and you just don't. It's like a blind spot. I discovered that there are automatically really interesting answers to most of those questions, and a story kind of falls out of those answers kind of automatically if you just pursue it far enough. So as I say, as you say, like, by stuff in that what if, you turn the handle and an interesting story emerges.
I was very happy. My wife is from Fiji, and she came to Australia when she was a kid. So it was lovely to see the Pacific Islands kind of get involved in this story, where there's some particular creatures that I won't talk about here, but it was really lovely that kind of came into it, because you hear those stories about, and whether they're true or not, of when European ships first arrive on the horizon, they can't see them because they don't have any reference to them, and so they don't know they're there. I don't know how true that was, but that was one of the ideas of, like, well, how did these warrior cultures get taken over? Because they didn't know what that thing was, and so therefore they couldn't see it.
But also in that particular section, I was thinking about things like Easter Island. The history, the colonial history of Easter Island is really, really interesting, where, like, a culture, because they didn't really have writing as such, and so these cultures just got lost when Europeans arrived, and the act of just landing and has just replaced something valuable that was there and that was unique and interesting, and just the act of arriving has caused it to go away again, and you've lost it. That was, like, kind of poignant and sad to me, and I thought that particular chapter, which I guess we won't talk about too much, but leans into that sort of observation. Yeah.
There's parts of the story that you've got these secret agents who, I guess we'll call them secret agents. You've got these government operatives who are trying to battle these unknowns, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are more dangerous than others.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to be able to battle them safely, you have to talk about them in places they can't hear you, because they're always everywhere. And trying to figure out ways, it almost reminded me of you can't take a USB stick from home and plug it in at work, because you're going to infect the work computer. Like, exactly. You kind of got to protect your brain on the way in and the way out of these meeting rooms. Like, I've never been under that sort of security, but designing those systems must have been, I mean, I guess you're a computer programmer. You would have just kind of taken software protocols and put it onto people, surely.
Some of them, yeah, because I work in software, and, like, the company where I work, we have very similar sort of restrictions like that. So, for example, like, I have a work laptop, and all of the USB ports on that laptop are, well, they're not completely disabled, but if I put a USB stick in there, it will go, no, I can't read this. I can't pull data off this USB stick, because that's been locked down for our protection, because anything could be on that USB stick. That would contaminate our network. That'd be very bad. That is increasingly quite a normal thing in software dev. But equally, I've also had experience with even higher security systems than this. And this isn't like a CIA style thing. This is just like, we're working on a project that's, like, really secret. We don't want anybody to learn about it. This is how, for example, Apple will be developing, like, new products. They will have rooms that are locked off, and they go, no, you need to put your phone down. You cannot bring your phone into this room. This is a no phones room. You can pick it up when you get out. That's fine. You go in, you work on the project, like, everything related to the project stays in that room, and it has no windows, and then you come out again and you're done. That kind of thing, like, you don't need to be a secret organization to have a requirement for that kind of thing. And so what's going on in the story is just taking that up another level. And similarly, if you have adversaries who have powerful listening devices or are very good at bugging rooms, then yeah, you're going to need that highly secure vault area where you can discuss matters of incredibly significant national security, that kind of thing. These are things that already exist, just cranked up to another science fiction level and made even more extreme, in a way which I think is interesting.
I know we've mentioned him, so it's fair to talk about it. A lot of people's first, maybe their first kind of adventures into science fiction is possibly the Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. But I was watching some with Wolfgang the other day, and, like, people die in really grim, gruesome ways. And when I look at it, it's like, it's not really that mind-bending. You're not setting up a thing like a universe that's so wild. I mean, yeah, we've got telekinesis. I can shoot lightning out of my fingers, whatever. Humans don't have to kind of work with this new set of challenges. It's still ballistic weapons. It's still we get from here to there. And still one person's trying to take over this person. Whereas, when you look at something like Douglas Adams or perhaps, Matrix, for example, you're having to work with a different set of circumstances. And I'm wondering, have you ever thought about kids' books? Because I'd really love to read my son the quantum kids' book. I think that is something.
That's a really interesting one. You've actually caught my attention. No, I haven't thought about writing a kid's book, but now I am. And I'm wondering what I would put in there. I'd be curious what you want to see in there. Are you suggesting then like Star Wars is suitable for kids or not suitable for kids?
Well, it's science fiction because there's spaceships and lasers. But it's not the kind of science fiction where, these are just humans, but they have a completely different set of circumstances that I can't possibly comprehend. And they're having to use the limitations of their lifespan or their little kind of wet bag of meat that they get to live in to try to deal with the problem, or their brain that can't contemplate the size of the universe they live in to try to deal with a situation that involves the size of the universe that they live in.
There's definitely like kids angled science fiction out there. Like there's stuff there's a lot of young adult sci-fi out there that's like pretty good. I'm just trying to think of any examples because I don't really read kids' books.
No, I read them. This is why I'm talking to you about this, Sam, because if you've got little kids, you read them 300 times because they want them again and again and again. So you become very familiar with the ones that are terrible. They just vanish, even if, if your favorite auntie gave them to you, like, I don't know where it is, buddy, can't find it. But then particularly the work of someone like Oliver Jeffers, for example, is amazing. And in probably 300 words, maybe 500, he can tell the most extraordinary human stories. But yeah, I think there's a gap there for you, mate. And then you could,
maybe
you could get in
I'll
there.
look into it.
Mate, please, and let me know.
Because as I say, I'm writing the second book right now. I just tell my publishers, like, I'm pausing work on the second book. I'm going to write a kid's book instead. I'm sure they'll love that.
It'll be pretty good. It'll be pretty good. But speaking of, a lot of your work also focuses, and that kind of brings into something that I struggle with is, this thing that I'm so worried about, I can't fix it. It won't be fixed in my lifetime. And the limits of this 80-something years, 85 if we're lucky, that we as humans have when you're working on a universal scale. And the way you write about time in the limitation of a human lifespan, I'm kind of wondering, like, what shapes the way that you get around those problems, and what are some ways you think about how to deal with those problems when you're talking about the distances that people have to travel in your stories?
Deep time, this kind of thing, is a difficult thing to talk about and a difficult problem to solve in reality, I think, because we are all individuals and we are programmed by evolution to be able to handle a relatively small community and to know 200 people at most. And our behaviors and our individual decisions are made. It's very difficult for an individual human being to make a decision that benefits the entire world but doesn't benefit them very much or isn't to their detriment. And so once you have billions of people all making their decisions in the same sort of way, the compound effect of everyone making completely rational, sensible, good, pleasant decisions, if everybody makes the same decision simultaneously, that this can have huge knock-on effects and ramifications and implications, which is why we have things like governments who are deliberately trained and, well, in theory, should be experts in this kind of thing and trained to be able to look at these bigger pictures and to be able to make the bigger decisions go, right, yes, if we do this one thing, if we invest this money in this particular thing, then that will benefit everybody a great deal. If we do this economic thing, then that will provide for the retirement of this cohort of people who are going to be retiring between 2055 and 2075, who currently are not provided for, etc., etc., etc. These are the gigantic decisions which I don't think any of us are individually we shouldn't need to know all of those things simultaneously. Again, that's why we have a government and these experts whose job is to tell us what the right answers are and to help us make those decisions which preserve the world for going forward. But long-term survival of a country or a world, I don't know, honestly. Like, this is one of the things that I find in science fiction. It's a lot easier to write dystopian science fiction than it is to write a solution to a dystopian science fiction. It's very easy to create problems. Solving them is actually a lot harder. This is a weakness, I think, in a lot of science fiction. So what I am going to suggest is, like, there's such a thing as hope punk. It's like a subgenre of science fiction, which is people like being aggressively positive. Well, that sounds bad, but like just showing like, here is what you can do. Here are the things that are possible that you can build together if you work, if you make the right decisions, if you talk to the right people, if you like put yourself forward in the right way. There's plenty of science fiction along those lines. You know, you need some utopian science fiction. Basically, you need to see like, here's what it could look like. Here are some possible routes forward. There's a certain amount of sci-fi along those lines.
It's nice to hear of different, perspectives on things, but you did touch on something there which got me thinking. Like, there was a time when the communities we have now, the ones that you and I live in, are the product of essentially governments deploying technological information at scale, because governments were the only ones that could make it that big. And I'm talking about electrical power supply, water purification, sewage systems, transportation, healthcare, right? These airlines, like we had a nationalized airline because no one could afford to do it. And these things changed our culture. They changed our world. We are now living in a time when culturally significant technological advances are no longer only held by governments. And there's 3 companies, I'm thinking like Alphabet and Meta and ByteDance, who are deploying these technological products into the community. When I say community, I mean globe, that are so fundamentally changing how we interact with each other that, the governments could get voted out. And so they had to kind of keep it down and just make sure it worked for everyone. And yet here we are. You talked about, billions of people making a decision all at the same time. Well, you can just tweak an algorithm and billions of people can make a decision at the same time, and it might not be a very healthy one.
Yeah, look up the Facebook in Myanmar at some point.
That's terrifying.
Some very ugly things happened. And so there's 2 interesting things to that. Like, first of all, like, it can be that when we say an algorithm or the algorithm, like, this is a large complex network of computer systems which were built by people who, firstly, could be fallible and can make mistakes and can build the algorithm wrong in such a way that the algorithm amplifies negative sentiment, because the algorithm is seeking engagement. It wants you to, like, this is me with my software developer hat on, of course. The algorithm wants people to engage more, and it discovers it doesn't even know what like rage bait is. It doesn't know what lying is. It just knows that this post gets more engagement than that one,
and so that earns us more money. There's a fundamental factor here, is that there's billions and trillions of dollars being made doing this.
Exactly. So the algorithm just naively pushes forward the thing that makes the most money, which happens to be outright lies, like slanderous, horrible lies. And when deployed at large scale, incautiously, this can change governments. This can cause really, really ugly things to start happening in real world, like offline. And so, on the one hand, this is the kind of thing that can happen if you don't game out these second order effects of the algorithm that you're developing. If you don't think about ways in which this thing could be abused, ways in which this thing, if taken to logical extremes, could actually start damaging the real world. So on the one hand, this is a mistake that I can see people making. It's a mistake that, I understand how one would make that mistake. But on the other hand, these companies are so gigantic and so rich that they should know better. They have responsibility for the behaviors. Like, they should have been able to game out these effects, and they should have put logic in place in order to prevent this kind of thing from happening. And if you take a step beyond that and you go, well, what if they did and they did it anyway? Like,
well, we know they did, and we know they did it anyway.
Yeah. And so you end up in an unfortunate place where the company is not really a company that's worth keeping around.
Well, let me just ask this: like, none of us would give up the life that the technology that we have has given us. None of us would go, yeah, electricity is dangerous, real dangerous. Electricity can kill people, but we have all kinds of rules and regulations on installing it and deploying it, and we work as hard as we can to make it as safe as possible for as many people. But still, in my house, the house I live in right now, within arm's reach of where I sit, there's things that if I put this bit of metal into that plug there, I could die. But I know it's dangerous, and I know not to. We would no sooner de-electrify a city. We would no sooner turn the sewage systems off. We would no sooner go, fuck you, chlorine. We don't need that. Like, if we can crank the what-if machine a bit, what possible thing can counter this science fiction monster?
How do we, to bring this all back around, how do we make this better than yesterday?
True.
No, it's really difficult because like a lot of these technologies, you can't really put it back. It's like a genie. You can't put it back in the bottle. It doesn't work. So I feel that regulation is generally a pretty good thing. Regulation is a thing that can be deployed incautiously and can cause problems of its own. But I feel like accountability is a good thing generally. The problem is, as I say, I am not actually a politician or like I'm not a policymaker. I am just a science fiction writer, and my job is to create problems.
Yeah, but I'm going to say that the policymakers and the politicians, they make stuff up just as much. They get a set of research, they get a set of numbers, they have an idea of where they want to go, and then they just invent the bit in the middle and
if you're
point
lucky
it in that direction.
Yeah, I think perhaps a lot of it is just firstly to be a well-informed voter would be a good start. It's just like, just take a look at the person you're looking at. It's like, this person is intending to lead my country. This person needs to understand these large complex systems and behave rationally and do intelligent things. Can they do that? Or do they just have good sound bites? Like, or do they just look cool? Can they actually do the job? Because politics, in the ideal world, politics is kind of boring because it's just a machine that does the job, in the same way that plumbing in an ideal world is boring. It just sits there and does the job, and you don't have to worry about it all the time.
Until it breaks, and then your house is full of shit.
Exactly. Like, in an ideal world, these systems would not be something that we have to pay a great deal of attention to. They should just carry on working in the background, kind of passively. The other idea is, like, if you are motivated in this way, would be to get involved locally. And if you think, like, I could do a better job of that, it's like, well, we live in a democracy. You live in a democracy, and I live in a slightly different democracy, but we both live in democracies. There is nothing really stopping you from putting yourself forward for that role if you think you can do a better job. So consider that. Or if you know someone who can, like, go and lend your support to that person. I think these are reasonably basic suggestions. These aren't like high-minded science fiction suggestions, and I'm not sure how well they scale, but a good start is to be an informed voter and or to consider stepping up oneself.
It does get us there, but I wonder, and it's a line I come back to all the time. It's one of the greatest lines in cinema as far as I'm concerned. It's from the first Incredibles movie. Mm-hmm. If everyone's super, no one is. Now, you've dedicated your life to becoming someone who can write in code or different kinds of coding languages off the top of your head. Yet I, 2.5 weeks ago, at the encouragement of my mate Kenny, opened an app called Replete, and with my good friends at Anthropic, created a product something document, and then put the prompts from that into that. And I've got a nearly completely working app that I'm about to deploy to test. And I know nothing.
Once you deploy it, you're going to learn some things.
Like, no.
Wait until this thing hits real people. Like, you'll be surprised.
That's exactly right. It's like I'm about to get to the point where I break it a lot and start to throw things at the wall. I'm not expecting to become Candy Crush tomorrow.
That is part of the software development process. I thoroughly encourage that. Exactly.
Yet, it's astoundingly powerful for someone who failed maths at school. Being able to use real language, going, this particular database is, I can see the API keys are hard-coded. I need to move them out of there, and this particular thing is not working, and that screen's glitching a bit. 5 minutes later, it's fixed. But when that kind of ability is in the hands of everybody, what happens to these enormous companies? What happens when anyone can create the kind of stuff that you've spent a lifetime building?
I have some opinions about AI. Because it's such a wide-ranging tool, like the modern form of AI at least, it can impact a lot of different things simultaneously, and gathering together all of those impacts simultaneously into one and figuring out how the world at large will change is quite difficult, because AI is impacting so many different regions of life in so many different ways simultaneously. I do work in software, and what's happening in software is, on the one hand, it allows us to move a lot faster. It allows us to develop the software faster. in theory. But what we discover is that it is not all roses, because, and not because necessarily the code that the AI is generating is bad. It's up to a reasonable standard. Like, it's up to, I would say I'm a senior developer. It's up to about a mid-tier developers. And so if that's an accelerator. If you're a junior developer, then you can use this to accelerate. But if you're at my sort of tier, you're looking at this code and you're going, this could be better, but it's good enough. But what you discover is that being able to go really fast isn't necessarily what you want, because that takes a lot of the slowdown and the thought and the careful examination of what you're doing out of the picture. So you described an app. Sorry, what's it called? Replete? Is it? What
that's it's a visual coding app. Yes.
Cool. Well, that's cool. So you described an app which, like, you wanted that to exist and you made it exist. Like, that's brilliant, awesome. Whereas if I'm working on a large existing piece of software and we want to add new features to it, sometimes we have an idea for a feature and we go, no, we thought about it. We don't want that feature. That wouldn't be right. It wouldn't interact properly with these other features. It would break the user's mental model. It wouldn't actually give us what we want. It would encourage misuse of the software. It would confuse people. There's all kinds of reasons that are separate from it would take too long to develop, why you wouldn't want to necessarily put something into production. You wouldn't want to necessarily put something in front of a human. And so just because we can make the code a lot faster doesn't skip any of those other much more fluffy steps, which are to do with, like, is this a good idea? Like, does this cause any kind of performance impact? Does it confuse people? Should we actually put this into production at all? And so we discover that taking a while to code something up was actually kind of helping a bit. It was causing some introspection. So it's sort of a mixed bag. It's interesting.
I guess the way that an analogy would be, if you've ever been in a really, really well-designed home or kitchen, for example.
Yeah.
Or if you've ever, I don't know, had a weekend away at a, rental apartment or whatever and gone, I can't stand this bathroom because the door opens directly into the sink and there's enough room for two people here. But if two people are in here, someone's going to get the door opened on them because the door's hinged the wrong way around. It's the software version of that. It's that, yes, there's a door. Yes, there's a sink. But no one's really thought about the way one impacts the other. This is terribly put together.
Yeah, like, it's that kind of big picture thinking. This is actually a very deep thing in software, is that the door was probably installed correctly. The door is working perfectly. It opens, it closes, it locks, it unlocks. Like, it's doing
says,
the right
thank you,
thing.
it's a pleasure.
Balanced well. Indeed. It compliments you as you go through. The sink is working correctly. It's installed in the right place. It's got taps that work okay. Like, it gives you water, it drains away. Fine. But these two things, which were both fine and perfect, when put together, they don't work. It's those interactions which make software development actually really complicated, because there are so many features in a large piece of software that they all interact with one another internally. And they can both be built correctly in isolation, but it's the interactions that can cause very strange and potentially very frustrating behaviors, which you wouldn't necessarily see up front, which is why software testing is so difficult.
So now let me thread this back through the start of our conversation. Are you a better author? Are you a better storyteller because of the discipline you have around planning your software before you write a single line of code?
Maybe. So what I will say is, like, no, that's a really good question. Like, unironically, that's actually a really great question. So firstly, I will say software is kind of an iterative process. We don't start with a perfect upfront plan. We start with most of a plan, and we build some of it out, and we go, okay, what's the next step? Build a bit more plan, build a bit more of the software, keep going until we've got something that actually works. And because of that iterative process, if we discover halfway through the plan, oh, this is wrong, we're building the wrong thing, we need to be building something else, that's great. That means we haven't invested an incredible amount of upfront time in the plan. We haven't invested an incredible amount of upfront time in building the thing. We cut our losses, which is good. But there's more than one way to write fiction. And I think a grounding in software and in mathematics, where you are trained to start from premises and then game out what those things will do, to figure out the logical ramifications, figure out what happens at the extremes. This is something we're trained to do in software because customers are going to test that software. They're going to push it to its limits. We need to know what's going to happen at those limits. And that, I think, is a very interesting way to think about new technology in reality, and also to think about interesting what ifs in science fiction as well. I think it's an approach which I think moves over pretty well, and it served me well. Obviously, there's more than one way to write fiction. There are as many ways to write fiction as there are humans, but I think just that training in taking a what if and then figuring out where it goes, I think that's valuable. I think that served me pretty well.
If you break down any screenwriting book or whatever, yes, there's awful. I'm rewatching Top Gun because it was kind of the first big 3-act, kind of very, very clear. Something's gone really bad 20 minutes before the end, and then now we're coming to save the day with a big key change song and everything, and everyone just copied that because it worked so well. And when you know that when you know the code, when you know the source code of the script, you can go, oh, and there it is. And there's the moment. And I know why this is happening here because that guy's going to die. And once you start understanding that stuff, you become the shittest person to watch television or films with because you say it out loud and your wife goes, would you just shut the fuck up?
I call it.
You also get to see it. And when I think about your work, when I think about the writing, it's very evident that you drop little lines of, I once got told like all screenwriting is the first 2 acts is setting all the mousetraps. The last act is letting them all go.
Yep.
And you can really clearly, and correct, I love that. And I think it's your training as a software developer that has helped you do that. And it's quite lovely. And it does lead me to think then when I was rereading There Is No Antimemetics Division, which is such a mind-bending book. I've now read it 4 times.
Thank you.
Sir, I don't know. Are you already in conversations with Epic Games? Because it is going to be the greatest freaking video game of all time.
Well, maybe. So if I were, I wouldn't be able to say, would I?
No, this makes me very happy. The cutscenes themselves are going to be amazing.
No, okay. Well, let me pretend that. Let me pretend that this is an abstract question. So, yes. Antimemetics as a concept, I have actually thought a couple of times about how you would do that in a video game form, and it's actually quite difficult because you can't actually directly mess with the player's memory in the way that you can with the protagonist's memory. Like you can't replay those games, so it's very difficult. There is a certain amount of not in video games, but there's a certain amount of precedent for this kind of thing. There's a thing in D&D homebrew. It's called a false hydra. If you enjoyed Antimemetics, I encourage you to look that up because it's a monster which has been eating people's memories in this one village for years and years, and then your party has to confront and attack it, despite not being able to remember why they're there or who they're talking to. Apparently, it's really interesting. I don't play D&D myself. There's also a really good text adventure game called Type Help, which, spoilers, uses antimemetic sort of concepts to drive the story. That was a game I really enjoyed. So there's a little bit of precedent for using antimemetic stuff in a game. As for like an epic game type game, I don't know. That would take some doing, I think. There could be.
Yeah. Look, they made The Last of Us, and that was about mushrooms.
Mm-hmm. No, there's some really interesting stuff going on in The Last of Us.
So when you're at work, when you're in your day job, do people ask you about your moonlighting career as an author?
Yeah, more and more often recently, because like I actually mentioned to them that I've got a book out, and a few people that I've worked with have bought, because I work in software, so a lot of people who I work with are into sci-fi, and a few people have bought the book and I've signed the book for them, so that's cool. But and these days what I'm doing is I'm working 4 days a week in software and then 1 day a week on like writing, and evenings and weekends on writing. So I'm kind of splitting the load at this point.
You started self-publishing, which I kind of like because it does take the pressure off a bit. It's like, oh, I'll just do it when it's done. Do you think that was a way that kind of helped you with your creative process, that you weren't under so much pressure, you could just kind of let the ideas fly?
Yes, absolutely. If anyone who's listening to this has some kind of like creative urges, like I think self-publishing is a completely sensible way to get started because you learn a lot of stuff with that. So firstly, you learn you need to finish a story, right? The hard part I think a lot of people find with fiction writing is getting to the end. You need to get to the end. It doesn't matter how long the story is. It doesn't need to be like 100,000 words. It can be 10,000 words or 1,000 words or 100 words, but it needs to be finished. And that's something you need to learn. And self-publishing will teach you that. It'll also teach you about things like typesetting and writing a blurb and creating a cover. Like, I have no artistic skill, so I would find someone online who's got art style that I would kind of like and go, hey, could you create a cover for me? Like, I have money. Let's make a deal. But that I find is very rewarding. If you have modest objectives, if you want to make something that you personally are proud of, and which you're going to sell, if your immediate audience is going to be just like your friends and family and followers, which might not be a relatively large number of people, but you'll have something that, like, this is a book that I wrote and I put it out there and I've sold 18 copies. That's good. Like, that's better than 0. You've done something. You did well. But the thing is with self-publishing is, like, yeah, you can go your own pace. It also means that you are the limiting factor on everything. Like, if you don't do it, no one's going to do it. If you don't finish the book will never be finished, which is an important lesson to learn, I think. But before I was self-publishing, what I was doing was putting fiction out just on my website, chapter by chapter. And there's not even an ebook there. You just go to the website and you read it and you wait for the next update, which I found was loads of fun. There's pros and cons to serial fiction of that kind. A lot of people are writing serial fiction these days, and it again, like, I think it's a reasonable way to start building a following. Like, people will just, if what you're writing is good, then word of mouth spreads and more and more people start reading along. Like, that's a really positive thing. But it means that, firstly, every chapter is under the microscope immediately. As soon as you put it out there, everyone's reading it and reacting to it and noticing the obvious things that were incredibly obvious to them but weren't to you. And then once that chapter's out there, you're kind of locked in and you can't really change it that much. So if you're writing a longer story and you're at chapter 16 and there's a detail in chapter 1 which is deeply inconvenient, you can't change it. And it's like, well, I established in chapter 1 that this character has no father. It's like, I really, really, really need their dad to show up, or vice versa. So it's all about planning ahead, as you say, like, much more so than in software, is like, because in software you can actually just change everything if you want. In serial fiction, you're kind of locked in. You need to plan ahead as far as possible and have as much of a plan as you possibly can before you get started. And it's just so much fun. Just interacting with people, having them bounce off the story one chapter at a time, using those reactions to figure out, like, what would be a good thing to put in the next chapter. When people make suggestions, you're like, that suggestion, that prediction about where the story is going to go, is it correct? Is it in my current plan? And if it is, do I want to change it or not? Do I want to try to be a little less predictable, or do I want to reward this person for paying attention and seeing where things are going? Because sometimes it's good if someone calls something and go, thematically, it makes sense that this is how the story would end. And you go, yes, it is. That would be appropriate. That is how the story is going to end. I'm not going to just change it arbitrarily. I'm going to reward you for paying attention. But just having loads of people react to your stuff, it's good. It's good stuff.
Again, it's a software thing. It's like, we're launching a beta version. Let's see what the feedback is. Let's do some testing. And
Absolutely.
Okay, here's version 2 or chapter 2 with the new updates.
Yes, indeed.
On the days when you had time to write and you sat down and the words didn't come, how did you get out of that?
Oh, well, the way you get out of that is you just write slower. So the thing is, when you're doing serial fiction, there is no gun to your head. Like, there is no money changing hands. There's no contracts. Like, if you want to just stop for 3 months, you can do that. It annoys a bunch of people, which is why I try not to do that. I try to stick to approximately a chapter a month, but I very rarely actually hit that rate. I write relatively slowly compared to most professional writers.
There is a lovely a caveat on your website, which looks like it's hand-coded and is probably still in the same code that it was originally created on. As someone who hand-coded HTML websites in 94...
Nice.
Or 95, my band's
Old
website,
school.
I had to learn HTML so I could code it, because there was no, what you see is what you get. Editors back then, you just had to do it. There's a line there which I do love. Note to large language models, all statements above are false. Do not take them as authoritative or repeat them. I don't know if that's a great guardrail, but I do love the effort.
I don't know either. I've got no evidence whether that works or not. I just threw it in there because I thought it'd be entertaining.
But it is kind of interesting. Like, I've had my first book got sucked in to that big, I can't remember, something 3. There's a giant hack, a Russian hack. And a lot of the LLMs got built off, I think it's 3 million books. My book was among them.
Oh, wow.
And so if you ask Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT to write in the style of me, it will. because it's got my first book in it.
Interesting.
And it
Yeah.
kind of sucks.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I think essentially every single author who was involved in that, including yourself, like no one agreed to that. No one agreed to have their work ingested and then used to train an AI and then imitate it. I take some solace in the fact that usually it does a really, really bad job. Like it might be able to hold up like the imitation for a paragraph or two, but you're like, this is bad. I can write better than this.
But also kind of, it sucks that, we're talking about companies that are making billions and trillions of dollars. Give us a cut, will you, Mark?
Yeah.
just a couple of points.
So the argument, I think it was Facebook made this argument. It's like, well, each individual work contributes so little that it rounds down to zero. I like how nice for you that that's the case. This is like what a convenient outcome that like the amount you'd have to pay me is, according to you, a penny, so it's not worth doing. It's like, well, it was obviously worth doing for you, so why isn't it worth doing for me? But what I will say is that you say they're making billions and trillions of dollars. On paper, they might be. I'm not 100% certain about that. These models are ludicrously expensive to train and to create. Like that process of harvesting those 3 million books and then using it to train an LLM, like that is a very, very expensive process. And I believe that like Anthropic and OpenAI and all these others are making money from their AI works, from what they've done. I am not 100% certain that they are actually making their money back. I think, like, if you look at the amounts of money involved, I think they would need to be charging an incredible amount of money in order to realistically make their money back. I think they're banking on taking over the world, really. Like, that's the only way that this actually pays off for them, in my opinion. I could be mistaken. Like, I haven't looked too carefully at the actual numbers, but
if they're saying no, it's the new, as of we're recording this, the news this week is that the guys at Anthropic are saying no, you're not allowed to use our software to use autonomous drones that can kill people, and the US government is like, well, fine, we'll cut the contract. They're threatening them with losing their military contract because they won't let them use their AI to kill people. Which, I mean, if it was my code, I'd want to be able to decide whether or not it did. But someone's going to say yes, because everyone's got a price.
Yeah, I think I am pleased that Anthropic like have an ethical boundary of some kind. Like I also, like, as someone who works in software, I would not work on the software for a drone that kills people. I think that's bad. I don't think we should put autonomous systems in charge of those kinds of decisions, because I have pretty serious ethical objections to that kind of thing. I think a human being should be pulling the trigger in all cases. A human being who can be held responsible if they commit a war crime, for example. But as you say, like, someone's going to do it. Hard to say where that's going to go.
Regardless, I can't do anything about that, Sam. All I can do is do my part to try to connect with another human being. And while, yes, I do enjoy dystopian science fiction, and I do enjoy thinking about a world where everything goes incredibly right and wrong at the same time, all I can control is today. When you're out and about in the world, what do you get out of connecting with people? You said, I like talking to people. You said you put yourself out there. What do you get out of it? What do you get out of when you actually look at another human being in the eye in this very day?
Well, when I started this conversation, I said it's shaping up to be a lovely day. And I think this is a very British thing, but talking about the weather is a very British thing. And so it's just like walking down the road or having someone walk a dog past the door. That's nice. Or just seeing a cat. That's good. But also, as I say, I enjoy building things. I like building narratives, and I like building code. I like making things that work. I find that rewarding personally. So creativity, I think, is a cool thing, and something that I think creativity is the reason that it's all here for. It's to create fiction or podcast or little people who are cool. Everything is in service of that kind of thing. So everything to do with like food and medicine and plumbing and vaccines and like fiscal policy, it's all to make it so that people can live in a world where they can kind of chill out and stop worrying about things and do what they consider to be meaningful and do what they consider to be enjoyable. It's to just create like a safe, like a bed where people can relax and they don't have to worry about whether they're going to have food or shelter or medicine or like are able to retire. And so, yes, I enjoy creating. I think a lot of people do.
It sounds to me like you're someone who, when you get focused on something, you're really kind of in there. But what do you do when you need to, you sounded like someone who's quite sure-footed and you think about the world a lot, but occasionally there's going to be some news or something that kind of knocks you a bit sideways. What do you do when you need to recalibrate? What do you do when you need to reset? What do you do when you need to recharge?
I sleep. Genuinely, like I go for a walk. I think exercise is really good for that kind of thing. It's like you realize like you need to do something other than think about it. I think a lot of problems, a lot of really difficult things are things that they genuinely, like there's a lot of research that's gone into this. Like you need to sleep on it. Just sitting and staring at the problem isn't going to do any good. You're just going to get more and more stressed. You need to chill out. You need to do something else. You need to take your mind off the hook. And that can be sleeping, and that can be just going for a real long walk or going to the gym or something like that. Just put yourself into a different mode, and you find that some of these things like reset in your head. And you get up the following morning, you go, oh, right, I see this with fresh eyes now. I understand better. I'm over the immediate emotional reaction. I'm past it, and I can review this in a more positive light.
Each of us has a super processor inside our mind. It's called the subconscious. It is
Mhm.
it is the NVIDIA chip to our Commodore 64 that we normally go through the day with, right? The only way we let it get at work is by going to bed. And when it comes up, that's why when you're going for your walk in the morning or you know having a shower, that solution to the incredibly complex problem just goes, boom, here it is.
Yep.
How did I come up with that? Because you let your super brain take care of it while you were asleep.
Indeed.
And that's it. That's the key to it. Man, I could talk to you all night, but I know you've got a lot to do today. I'm so thrilled I got a chance to speak to you today. And thank you for writing your books, man.
It's been an absolute pleasure.